You brought a street rat into my daughter's room? My husband's voice exploded through our Banana Island mansion like thunder, and I froze in the marble hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the open door of Zara's bedroom, I could see Chigozie, my husband of 15 years, the billionaire tech mogul everyone called the King of Lagos, standing over a small boy who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. The child's clothes were tattered, his feet bare and dusty, but his eyes held no fear, only a strange, quiet dignity. "Daddy, please don't shout," Zara's weak voice came from her wheelchair by the window. My daughter, my beautiful, brilliant 13-year-old daughter who'd been paralyzed from the waist down after that terrible accident 2 years ago, was actually smiling. I hadn't seen her smile in months. I stepped into the room, my silk wrapper swishing against my legs. "Chigozie, what's happening?" He whirled to face me, his expensive Italian suit stretching across his broad shoulders, his face contorted with rage. "Ask your daughter what she's done, Amara. Ask her why there's a beggar child in our home, probably carrying diseases, definitely planning to rob us blind." "His name is Tunde," Zara said quietly, wheeling herself closer to the boy. "And he wasn't begging. He was dancing." The boy, Tunde, stood perfectly still, his small hands clenched at his sides. His skin was several shades darker than ours, weathered by the Lagos sun, and there was a scar across his left cheek that made my chest tighten with maternal instinct. "Dancing?" Chigozie's laugh was cruel, bitter. "Is that what we're calling it now?" This boy was probably casing our property, looking for valuables to steal when our backs are turned. You know how these street children operate, Amara. They're all thieves and con artists. What would you do if your husband said this about a child? Hit like if you've ever felt conflicted between protecting your child's happiness and your husband's authority, and comment where you're watching from. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. For the first time since the accident that had stolen her ability to walk, her eyes were bright with something other than pain or despair. Her hands, usually limp in her lap, were gesturing animatedly as she explained. "I was sitting by the window this morning, feeling, you know how I feel most mornings." Zara's voice cracked slightly, and I moved closer to her. "Then I heard music from the street, Afrobeat music, Mama. And when I looked down, I saw Tunde dancing on the pavement below our gate. Not begging, not asking for anything, just dancing like he was free, like nothing in the world could touch him." Tunde spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly strong despite his small frame. "I dance every day, sir. It's the only thing that makes me feel like I'm still alive after my parents died in the Boko Haram attack in Maiduguri. Dancing is my prayer." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd heard about the attacks up north, seen the news reports of displaced children flooding into Lagos, but I'd never really connected those distant tragedies to the small figures I sometimes saw on the streets. Too absorbed in my own family's grief to consider theirs. Chigozie wasn't moved. "A touching story, I'm sure. One designed to manipulate wealthy people into opening their wallets. Amara, call security. Have them escort this boy back to wherever he came from." "No!" Zara's shout startled us all. My quiet, gentle daughter rarely raised her voice. "Mama, I asked him to come up. I sent Thomas down to bring him through the gate. I wanted to see him dance up close because when I watched him from my window, I felt something I haven't felt since the accident. I felt hope." Tears were streaming down her face now, and I knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in mine. They were trembling. "The doctors say I might never walk again," Zara continued, her words coming faster now. Desperate. "You and Daddy won't even talk about it anymore. You just pretend everything is fine while I sit in this chair watching my life pass by through a window. But Tunde dances even though he has nothing. He dances even though his parents are dead, and he sleeps under the Falomo Bridge. If he can dance, maybe I can find a reason to hope again." Chigozie's face had gone rigid, his jaw working as he struggled to maintain control. I knew that look. It was the same expression he wore during business negotiations when things weren't going his way. Cold calculation masked by barely contained fury. "This is ridiculous," he said finally. "The boy leaves, now." But I was seeing something else, something that made my blood run cold. Behind Chigozie's anger, behind his immediate dismissal of this child, there was something that looked almost like Panic? Why would a homeless boy dancing for our daughter cause my husband to panic? Let him stay for lunch, I heard myself say. The word surprised even me. Just lunch, Chigozi. Look at him. When did he last eat a proper meal? It's the least we can do. My husband's eyes snapped to mine, and in them, I saw a flash of something that made my stomach twist. It wasn't just anger. It was fury, directed at me for contradicting him, for siding with Zara over him. Fine, he bit out. One meal. But then he goes, and we're going to have a serious discussion about boundaries and security, Amara. This kind of sentimentality is exactly what criminals count on. He stormed out of the room, pulling his phone from his pocket, already barking orders to someone on the other end. I heard him mention background check and street connections before his voice faded down the hallway. Tundi looked up at me with those ancient eyes that had seen too much for such a young face. Thank you, Mom. You don't have to feed me. I can go if I'm causing trouble between you and your husband. Nonsense, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. My daughter invited you, and in this house, we honor invitations. Come, let's get you cleaned up before lunch. As I led Tunde toward the guest bathroom, with Zara wheeling along beside us, chattering excitedly about the dance moves she'd seen, I caught a glimpse of Chigozi through his study door. He was on the phone again, but his face had gone pale, almost ashen. His free hand was gripping the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles had turned white. Yes, I'm sure, I heard him hiss into the phone. Find out who sent him. Find out what he knows. And do it quietly. A chill ran down my spine. Who sent him? What could a homeless 10-year-old possibly know that would make my billionaire husband look so afraid? The water was running in the bathroom when I heard Tunde humming, a traditional Hausa song my grandmother used to sing. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, and through the door, I could hear Zara laughing, actually laughing, as she taught him the words to a Burna Boy song. But I couldn't shake the image of Chigozi's face, or the cold dread settling in my chest like a stone. Something was very wrong here. Something about this boy's presence had rattled my husband in a way I'd never seen before. Not in 15 years of marriage. Not even during the accident that paralyzed our daughter. I thought I knew my husband. I thought I knew every angle of his face, every tone of his voice, every shade of his moods. But the man I'd seen in that study, the man whose hands shook as he demanded to know who sent a homeless child to our gate, that was a stranger. And strangers, I was about to learn, are the most dangerous people of all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think Chigozi is hiding? Comment below. The dining room felt like a battlefield dressed in silk and crystal. Our long mahogany table, imported from Ghana, and worth more than most Lagosians earned in a year, had never felt so tense. Chigozi sat at the head, his face a mask of controlled civility, as our house manager Joyce brought out dish after dish, jollof rice, peppered goat meat, moi moi, fried plantains, and a goosey soup with pounded yam. It was enough food to feed a village, but that was how we lived, how we'd always lived, in abundance so extreme we'd stopped noticing it. Until Tunde's eyes widened at the sight of the food. He didn't grab or lunge like Chigozi probably expected. Instead, he waited, hands folded in his lap, until I nodded at him to serve himself. Even then, he took modest portions, his movements careful and deliberate, like someone who'd learned early that showing desperation only brought shame. Zara watched him with fascination, barely touching her own food. Tell us about your dancing, Tunde. Where did you learn? Tunde swallowed a mouthful of jollof rice. I could see him savoring every grain before answering. My father taught me. He was a dancer in Maiduguri, performed at weddings and naming ceremonies. He said dancing was like speaking to God without using words. Was? I asked gently. He died 3 years ago. The attack came at night. My mother, his voice caught slightly, but he pushed through. My mother tried to hide me in a water tank. She saved me, but she didn't make it out. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Chigozi's fork had stilled halfway to his mouth, but his eyes were calculating, measuring, assessing something I couldn't name. 3 years ago, Chigozi said slowly, that would make you 7 when you came to Lagos? Yes, sir. I traveled with other displaced children. We walked most of the way. Some of us died on the road. And you've been living on the streets since then? Surely there are camps, orphanages, government programs? There was something off about Chigozi's questioning. It wasn't concern, it was interrogation. He was digging for something, though I couldn't imagine what. Tunde's jaw tightened slightly. The camps are full, sir, and sometimes dangerous. The streets are hard, but at least there I can choose to run if I need to. Very resourceful, Chigozi said, and there was an edge to his voice like a knife wrapped in velvet. Tell me, Tunde, have you danced in front of many big houses like ours? Chigozi, I warned, sensing the trap being laid. He ignored me. It's a reasonable question, Amara. I'm curious about the boys' business model. Tunde met my husband's gaze directly, and I felt a strange stirring of pride at the child's courage. I dance where the music takes me, sir. Sometimes in front of shops in Victoria Island, sometimes by the beach, sometimes in Ikeja. I don't choose houses. I just dance. How convenient that you chose our house on a day when our daughter happened to be by the window. Daddy, Zara's voice was sharp. Why are you being so mean? Tunde didn't do anything wrong. I'm protecting this family, Chigozi snapped, his composure finally cracking. Something you're too young to understand. There are people in this city, dangerous people, who use children for reconnaissance, for manipulation, for... His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, and I watched the color drain from his face. Without a word, he stood and walked out of the dining room, the phone pressed to his ear. Through the archway, I could hear fragments of his conversation. You're certain? No, that's impossible. How did he find... I said handle it. I don't care what it costs. When he returned 5 minutes later, he looked 10 years older. His hands were shaking as he picked up his wine glass and drained it in one long swallow. Is everything all right? I asked, though I knew the answer. Business issues. Nothing to concern yourself with. He turned to Tunde with a smile that never reached his eyes. I apologize for my harsh tone earlier. It's been a stressful week. Tell me more about your dancing. Have you ever had formal training? The sudden shift in Chigozi's demeanor was jarring. Tunde looked confused, but answered carefully. No, sir. Just what my father taught me before he died, and what I learned from watching videos on phones when people will let me. Remarkable natural talent. Then, Chigozi was speaking faster now, his words almost tripping over each other. You know, Amara, perhaps the boy could be useful. Zara needs stimulation, motivation. What if we arrange for Tunde to visit regularly? Dance for her, spend time with her. It might be good for her recovery. I stared at my husband like he'd grown a second head. 10 minutes ago, he was ready to throw Tunde out with the trash. Now he wanted regular visits? Really, Daddy? Zara's face lit up like Christmas morning. You mean it? Of course. In fact, why don't we set him up in the boys' quarters out back? We're not using them anyway. He could stay there, have proper meals, maybe even attend school. It would be our good deed, our way of giving back. Something was very, very wrong. I'd been married to Chigozi long enough to know when he was maneuvering, when he was playing chess while everyone else played checkers. This sudden generosity, this complete reversal, it wasn't charity, it was strategy. That's incredibly generous, I said carefully. But perhaps we should discuss this privately first. What's to discuss? Chigozi's voice had a manic edge now. The boy needs help. Our daughter needs inspiration. It's a perfect solution. Tunde, would you like to stay with us? As our guest? Tunde looked between us, confusion and hope warring on his young face. I don't want to cause problems in your family, sir. Your wife looks worried. Smart child. My wife worries about everything, Chigozi said with a forced laugh. It's her nature. But I insist. You'll stay. Starting tonight. Joyce, he called out to our house manager. Please prepare the boys' quarters. Our young friend will be staying with us indefinitely. Joyce appeared in the doorway, her face carefully neutral, but I caught the quick glance she threw my way. A look that said she too sensed something amiss. As Chigozi continued making plans, his words tumbling out in an almost frantic rush. School enrollment, proper clothes, dance lessons. Everything the boy could possibly need. I watched Tunde carefully. His initial surprise had given way to something else. He was studying Chigozie with the same intensity my husband had used on him earlier. And then I saw it. The boy's eyes flickering to Chigozie's left hand, to the distinctive gold signet ring on his pinky finger. It was a custom piece designed by a jeweler in Abuja, with the initials C.O. Ney, engraved in an intricate pattern. Chigozie never took it off. He said it was his good luck charm, a gift from his late father. Tunde's expression when he saw that ring, it wasn't surprise, it was recognition, and something darker, something that looked almost like satisfaction. My stomach dropped. "Excuse me," I said, standing abruptly. "I need to check on something in the kitchen." In the hallway, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called the one person who might tell me the truth. My brother Kunle, a criminal lawyer who defended everyone from politicians to street gangs. "Kunle," I whispered urgently when he answered, "I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it quietly. Find out everything you can about displaced children from the Maiduguri attacks 3 years ago. Specifically, any children who might have ended up in Lagos. And," I paused, my voice dropping even lower, "any connection between those attacks and tech companies in Lagos? Any rumors, any investigations? Anything." "Amara, what's going on? You sound terrified." "I don't know yet. That's what scares me. Just, please, Kunle, quickly." I hung up and stood in the cool marble hallway, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of the pieces I was seeing but couldn't yet fit together. Chigozie's panic, his phone calls, his sudden reversal, Tunde's recognition of that ring, and the way my husband now seemed desperate to keep the boy close rather than send him away. "Keep your enemies close," my grandmother used to say. But which one of them was the enemy? My husband, or a homeless 10-year-old boy with ancient eyes and secrets buried beneath his quiet dignity? Through the dining room door, I heard Zara laughing, really laughing, as Tunde described a dance move. For the first time in 2 years, my daughter sounded like herself again, like the girl she'd been before the accident, before the wheelchair, before the endless days of pain and despair. But that laughter felt like a clock ticking down, like something beautiful that couldn't last because the foundation beneath it was built on lies I hadn't yet uncovered. I walked back into the dining room with a smile plastered on my face, playing the role of the dutiful wife, the grateful mother, the woman who had everything and therefore questioned nothing. But inside I was screaming, because I'd seen the way Chigozie looked at Tunde when he thought no one was watching. And it wasn't the look of a generous benefactor. It was the look of a man trying to keep a witness close enough to control. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What secret is Chigozie hiding about Tunde? Comment your theories below. The boys' quarters had been empty for years, ever since we fired the security guard who'd been stealing from us. Now watching Joyce help Tunde settle into the small but comfortable space, a proper bed with clean sheets, a bathroom with running water, a wardrobe that would swallow his few possessions. I felt the weight of our wealth in a new, uncomfortable way. Tunde stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, his eyes wide with disbelief. This is all for me?" "Yes, dear," Joyce said gently, her maternal instincts clearly activated. "You'll be safe here, and tomorrow we'll take you shopping for proper clothes. But for tonight, there's soap and towels in the bathroom, and I'll bring you dinner later if you're still hungry." After Joyce left, I lingered in the doorway. Tunde was running his hand along the bedspread, a simple gesture that somehow felt sacred, the touch of a child who'd forgotten what softness felt like. "Tunde," I said quietly, "can I ask you something?" He turned to face me, his guard immediately up. "Smart child, too smart. When you saw my husband's ring at dinner, you recognized it, didn't you?" The question hung between us like a blade. For a long moment, I thought he might deny it, might retreat behind the careful mask of a street child who learned that honesty could be dangerous. But instead, he sat down on the edge of the bed and looked up at me with those ancient eyes. "Yes, Mom." My breath caught. "How?" "I don't know if I should tell you. You seem like a kind woman. I don't want to hurt you." Those words, "I don't want to hurt you," sent ice through my veins. Tunde, please. If there's something I need to know about my husband, about my family's safety, your family is safe, he interrupted. It's not that kind of danger. It's different. I crossed the room and sat beside him on the bed. My expensive perfume, Chanel, imported, costing more than this child had probably seen in his lifetime, suddenly feeling obscene. Tell me, I said simply. Tunde took a deep breath. 3 years ago, before the attack on my village, there were men who came. Foreign men, but with Nigerian accents. People like your husband, rich people from the South. They were meeting with our local chiefs, talking about mining rights, about the rare minerals in the ground beneath our homes. My hands had gone cold. Chigozi's company, Technova Solutions, had expanded into mining operations 5 years ago. He'd told me it was diversification, smart business, nothing to concern myself with. My father overheard things. Tunde continued, his voice barely above a whisper. The meetings weren't about fair deals. They were about displacement, about making people leave their lands so the mining could begin without interference or compensation. My father, he danced at one of those meetings, entertainment for the chiefs and the businessmen. He saw things. He heard things. What kind of things? Plans, payments to certain groups to create instability, to make people flee so the land would be empty. And one of those businessmen, he wore a ring just like your husband's. I remember it because my father pointed it out later. He said rings like that meant power, meant money, meant the kind of man who could change your life with a signature. The room was spinning. I gripped the edge of the bed to steady myself. Tunde, are you telling me that the attack on your village, the attack that killed your parents, was somehow connected to business interests? To mining companies? I'm saying that 2 weeks after that meeting, armed men came to our village in the night, and 3 months later, mining equipment appeared on what used to be our farmland. My uncle, and who survived, he went back to sea. He sent word to those of us who'd scattered. The company name on the equipment was Technova. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The walls of this comfortable room, walls built with money earned from a company that might have profited from displacement and death, seemed to be closing in. Why didn't you tell someone? The police, authorities? Tunde's laugh was bitter, too bitter for a child. Ma, you're a rich woman. You live in this beautiful house, but you still don't understand how Nigeria works for people like me. Who would believe a homeless child from the north over a billionaire from Lagos? And even if they did believe me, who would care? Northerners dying is just news, just numbers. Nobody cares about our numbers. The truth of his words cut deeper than any blade. I wanted to protest, to defend my country, my city, myself, but I couldn't, because he was right. Then why did you come here? I asked. Why dance outside our gate? Surely you knew it was dangerous. For the first time, Tunde's composure cracked. Tears welled in his eyes. I wasn't planning to. I dance everywhere. It's how I survive, how I eat. But this morning, I was dancing near your gate because the shade was good, and the street was quiet. And then I heard your daughter's voice calling down to me. She sounded so sad, so lonely. Like me. He wiped his eyes roughly. I thought maybe if I could make her smile, it would be something good, something pure. I didn't come here for revenge, Ma. I came here because your daughter's sadness called to mine. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. But then I saw the ring, he continued, and I knew who your husband was, what he might be, and I thought maybe God brought me here for a reason. Maybe it's time someone saw the truth. Maybe it's time that man faced what he did. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of his revelation settling over us like a shroud. Outside, I could hear Lagos coming alive for the evening, generators roaring to life, street vendors calling out their wares, the endless honking of traffic, the sounds of a city that moved forward relentlessly, crushing stories like Tunde's beneath its wheels. Does Chigozie know? I finally asked. Does he know who you are? Why you're really here? I don't think he knows exactly who I am. I was 7 when my father danced at that meeting, and I look different now, older and harder. But I think he suspects something. The way he looks at me, The way he suddenly wants to keep me close. He's afraid of something. He's afraid of exposure, I said quietly. He's afraid of what you might know, what you might reveal. By keeping you here, under his roof, he can control the narrative. Control you. Tunde nodded slowly. What will you do, Ma? It was the question I'd been asking myself since the moment I'd seen that flash of recognition in his eyes at dinner. What would I do? What could I do? I was Amara Okonkwo, wife of one of Nigeria's richest men, mother to a daughter who depended on me, woman who'd built her entire life on the foundation of a marriage that might be constructed from blood and lies. If what Tunde said was true, and every instinct screamed that it was, then my husband wasn't just a ruthless businessman. He was complicit in displacement, possibly in death, certainly in the destruction of communities. The money that paid for Zara's medical care, for this mansion, for my designer clothes and imported perfume, might be stained with the blood of innocence. But if I acted rashly, if I confronted Chigozie without proof, without strategy, he would deny everything. He'd paint Tunde as a liar, a con artist, a disturbed child spinning tales to get sympathy and money. And he'd send the boy away, back to the streets where any number of accidents could silence him forever. I need time, I told Tunde finally. Time to think, to plan, to gather proof. Can you be patient? Can you play along, be the grateful rescued child, while I figure out how to handle this? I've been patient for 3 years, Ma. I can be patient a little longer, but, he hesitated. Your daughter, she's kind, she's good. I don't want her to get hurt by any of this. My throat tightened. Neither do I. That's why we have to be smart, strategic. Chigozie is a powerful man. We can't just accuse him. We have to trap him. Tunde nodded, and in that moment, we became co-conspirators. A desperate mother and a homeless child, united against a man who had everything to lose and would stop at nothing to protect his secrets. After I left Tunde settled in the boys' quarters, I made my way back to the main house. Through the large windows, I could see Chigozie in his study, hunched over his computer, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. He looked worried, afraid. Good. My phone buzzed with a text from Kunle. Found something. Need to talk in person. Tomorrow. Don't tell Chigozie. I deleted the message and climbed the stairs to check on Zara. She was in bed, propped up against pillows, scrolling through her phone with more animation than I'd seen in months. Mama, she called out when she saw me. I was just watching dance videos on YouTube. Tunde said he'd teach me some moves tomorrow. Not standing moves, but things I can do with my upper body, with my hands. He says dancing isn't about your legs, it's about your spirit. I sat on the edge of her bed and stroked her hair, my heart breaking and healing simultaneously. That's wonderful, baby. I'm so glad he makes you happy. He does. It's strange, isn't it? I was so sad this morning, feeling sorry for myself like I do every day. And then Tunde appeared, like an angel, and suddenly I remembered that there are worse things than being in a wheelchair. At least I'm alive. At least I have you and Daddy and this beautiful home. Tunde has nothing, but he still finds reasons to dance. If only she knew, if only she understood that Tunde's nothing had been stolen by men like her father, that his reasons to dance were carved from loss and survival, not inspiration. But she would know eventually. They would all know, because I was going to make sure that the truth came out, no matter what it cost, even if it cost me everything. That night, I lay beside Chigozie in our king-sized bed, listening to his breathing, watching his chest rise and fall. This man I'd loved, married, built a life with. Who was he really? Had I ever truly known him? Or had I been so dazzled by his success, his confidence, his ability to provide a life of luxury that I'd never looked beneath the surface? Amara? His voice cut through the darkness. Are you awake? Yes. About the boy. Tunde. I know my behavior today was erratic. I want to explain. I held my breath, waiting. When I saw him in Zara's room, it triggered something. A fear. You know how it is in this city. Kidnappings, robberies, people using children as pawns. I overreacted. But when I calmed down and really thought about it, I realized this could be good for Zara, good for all of us, a chance to make a real difference in someone's life. The lies fell from his lips smooth as silk. This was what he did, who he was. A man who could spin any narrative, justify any action, make you believe that up was down and darkness was light. "You're a good man," I heard myself say. "I'm proud to be your wife." He reached for my hand in the darkness, squeezed it gently. "And I'm blessed to have you. You're my anchor, Amara, my conscience. Promise me you'll always tell me if you think I'm going astray." "I promise," I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Later, after Chigozie had fallen asleep, I slipped out of bed and crept downstairs to his study. I knew his computer password, Zara's birthday, predictable and sentimental, and within minutes I was scrolling through files marked mining operations and northern expansion. The documents were dense, filled with legal jargon and financial projections, but certain phrases jumped out: strategic displacement, minimal compensation protocols, secured through local partnerships, and then buried in an email chain from 3 years ago. Situation in Maiduguri resolved. Land access confirmed. Operations can proceed as planned. Situation resolved. Such clean, corporate language for destroyed homes and murdered families. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to retake several shots. Then I cleared the computer's history, closed the files, and crept back upstairs like a thief in my own home. Because that's what I was now, a thief, stealing evidence against my own husband, preparing to tear apart the life I'd built, to expose the man I'd loved for 15 years as something monstrous. For Tunda, for his parents, for all the invisible people whose suffering had funded my comfort, and for Zara, who deserved to know that her father was a monster before she grew up to become one too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. How do you think Amara should handle this revelation? Comment below. My brother Kunle arrived the next morning while Chigozie was at his downtown office. We sat in the garden, far from the house where servants might overhear, while Zara and Tunde practiced dance moves in her bedroom. The sight of her laughter drifting through the windows, a painful reminder of what was at stake. "You're not going to like what I found," Kunle said without preamble. He pulled a folder from his briefcase, thick with documents and photographs. "Technova has been under investigation by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for the past 18 months. Nothing public yet, but I have contacts. The allegations involve illegal mining operations, bribery of local officials, and, Amara, this is the hard part, possible connections to the insurgent activities in the Northeast." My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. "Connections? What kind of connections?" "The EFCC believes, though they haven't proven yet, that Technova and several other Southern companies were paying protection money to certain militant groups to clear areas for mining, essentially funding violence to create displacement so they could claim the land was abandoned and move in legally." "That's not protection money," I whispered. "That's contract killing." Kunle's face was grim. "In effect, yes. The government has been slow to act because the companies involved are too powerful, too connected. Prosecuting them would mean admitting that Nigerian business elites profited from terrorism. It would destabilize the economy, shake investor confidence. So they're building an airtight case quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike." I thought of Tunda's parents, of entire villages scattered to the wind, of children walking hundreds of miles to Lagos only to die on the roads or end up sleeping under bridges. Also, men like my husband could expand their profit margins. "There's more," Kunle continued. "I found records of the meeting in Maiduguri 3 years ago. Your husband was there, along with executives from 5 other companies. And 2 weeks later, exactly as your young friend said, the attacks began." I handed him my phone, showing him the photographs I'd taken from Chigozie's computer. He studied them carefully, his lawyer's mind processing the evidence. "This is good," he said finally. "Combined with what the EFCC already has, this could be enough. But Amara, you need to understand what you're about to do. If you help prosecute your husband, he won't just lose his business. He'll go to prison for a long time. And you'll lose everything. The house, the money, the lifestyle. Zara's medical care will be paid for by money that's clean, I interrupted fiercely. I'd rather we lived in a small flat in Surulere, struggling but honest, than in this mansion built on graves. Kunli reached across and squeezed my hand. When did my sister become so brave? When I realized I'd been a coward for 15 years. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Kunli would coordinate with his EFCC contacts, preparing them for the additional evidence. I would keep Tunda safe and continue gathering information from Chigozi's files. But we needed more. We needed something irrefutable, something Chigozi couldn't deny or spin. The meeting, I said suddenly. Tunde said his father danced at the meeting in Maiduguri. There must have been other witnesses, other survivors who saw Chigozi there. Kunle nodded slowly. If we could find them, get their testimonies. But Amara, it's been 3 years. Most of those displaced have scattered across the country. Finding them would be like searching for raindrops in the ocean. Then we make Chigozi reveal himself, I said. We set a trap. That evening, I put the first phase of my plan into motion. At dinner, another tense affair with Chigozi, watching Tunda like a hawk watches a mouse. I casually mentioned that a journalist from This Day newspaper had called requesting an interview about our family's charitable works. Chigozi's fork froze midway to his mouth. What journalist? What did you tell them? Nothing yet, but I thought it might be good publicity. We could talk about taking in Tunde, helping displaced children. The story of how a homeless boy brought hope back to our paralyzed daughter. It's inspiring, don't you think? The silence that followed was electric. Chigozi's jaw worked silently, his knuckles white around his knife. No, he said finally. No journalists, no publicity. But Daddy, Zara interjected, wouldn't it be good if more people helped children like Tundi? We could start a foundation, help other kids find homes. I said no. Chigozi's roar made us all jump. Zara's eyes filled with tears, and I saw Tunde tense, ready to defend her despite being a fraction of my husband's size. Chigozi immediately tried to recover, softening his voice. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, baby girl. It's just, there are security concerns. Publicity attracts the wrong kind of attention. People who might try to hurt us to get our money. I'm only thinking of your safety. But I'd seen it, the flash of pure panic when I mentioned the journalist. Chigozi was terrified of exposure, of his name being connected to Tunde's story, of anyone digging into the circumstances that brought a Maiduguri orphan to our door. After dinner, while Chigozi retreated to his study for urgent business calls, I found Tundi in the garden, staring up at the Lagos skyline glittering in the distance. He's scared, Tunde observed quietly. Good. Scared people make mistakes. You sound older than 10, I said, sitting beside him on the stone bench. I haven't been 10 for a long time, Ma. Not really. That boy died in Maiduguri. We sat in companionable silence for a moment before I asked the question that had been weighing on me. Tunde, when this is over, when Chigozi faces justice, what will happen to you? Where will you go? He shrugged, but I caught the flash of fear in his eyes. Back to the streets, I suppose. It's what I know. No, I said firmly. No, you won't. Whatever happens, whatever we lose, you'll have a home. With me and Zara. I promise you that. His eyes widened. But I'm the reason your husband will go to prison. I'm the reason your life will fall apart. Why would you want me? I took his small, scarred hand in mine. Because you're the reason I woke up. The reason I remembered that some things matter more than comfort. And because my daughter loves you. She hasn't loved anything in 2 years, Tunde. You gave her that gift. Whatever else happens, you're family now. Tears streamed down his face. The first real tears I'd seen from him. The first crack in his armor. He collapsed against me, sobbing, and I held him while he cried out 3 years of grief and fear and loneliness. I miss them so much, he choked out. I miss my mama and my baba. I miss my home. I miss being a child who didn't know about evil men and bad business and blood money. I know, sweetheart. I know. Above us, through Chigozi's study window, I could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear, his face twisted with stress. He was unraveling, making those mistakes Tundi had predicted. The next morning, my trap tightened. I woke early and called the This Day journalist, a real one this time. using a contact Kunle had provided. Her name was Blessing Adeyemi, and she'd built a reputation for investigative pieces that brought down corrupt politicians and businessmen. "Mrs. Okonkwo," she said when I explained who I was, "I've been trying to get an interview with your husband for 2 years. He's very elusive when it comes to the press." "I'm not calling about an interview," I said. "I'm calling to give you a story, a big one. But I need guarantees, protection for a minor witness, immunity for my cooperation, and security for my daughter." There was a long pause. "How big are we talking?" "Mining operations, funding of insurgent activities, displacement of thousands, deaths of hundreds, and documentation to prove it all." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "When can we meet?" We arranged a meeting for that afternoon at a small restaurant in Ikea, far from Victoria Island and the eyes of Chigosi's associates. Kunle would join us with the EFCC officials. The net was closing, but Chigozi wasn't the billionaire king of Lagos for nothing. He'd built his empire on ruthlessness and cunning, and he had resources I was only beginning to understand. That afternoon, as I prepared to leave for my meeting, I found Tunde's room in the boys' quarters empty. His few possessions were still there, but the boy was gone. Panic seized my chest. I ran through the compound, calling his name, checking every room, every hiding place. Joyce hadn't seen him. The security guard said he hadn't passed through the gate. He'd simply vanished. Then I found the note on my bedside table, in careful, childish handwriting. "Ma, don't come looking for me. Your husband knows. He sent men to take me." But I ran. "I'm good at running. I'm sorry I can't help you anymore. Thank you for being kind. Tell Zara I'll keep dancing for her. Tell her not to give up. T." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the words. Chigozi knew. Somehow he'd discovered our plan, and he'd moved against Tunde. But Tunde had escaped. For now. I had to leave immediately for the meeting, had to get this evidence to people who could protect it. But every instinct screamed at me to find Tunde first, to make sure he was safe. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I have what you're looking for. Falomo Bridge. Come alone if you want to see him alive. Tell anyone and the boy disappears forever. You have 1 hour." A friend. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about exposure anymore. This was about Chigozi protecting his empire by any means necessary, even if it meant threatening a child. I called Kunle, my voice barely steady. "Change of plans. Chigozi has Tunde, or someone working for him does. They want me to come alone to Falomo Bridge." "Amara, no. That's exactly what they want. To isolate you, to eliminate both witnesses at once. We bring the police, the EFCC. And if we do, they'll kill him, Kunle. You know how this works. These men don't make idle threats. Then we fake it. You go, but we have people watching from a distance. Armed people. The moment they have you, we move in." It was risky, possibly insane. But what choice did I have? I'd promised Tunde he'd be safe. I'd promised him a home, a future, an end to running. I wasn't going to let him down. An hour later, I stood on Falomo Bridge as the Lagos sun beat down mercilessly and traffic roared past. The bridge was crowded, hawkers selling everything from phone chargers to fried plantains, commuters rushing to and from work, the usual organized chaos of Lagos. Then I saw him, Tunde, being held by 2 men in the shadows beneath the bridge. Even from a distance, I could see he was terrified but trying to stay brave. One of the men was speaking into a phone, his eyes scanning the bridge. My phone rang. "Mrs. Okonkwo." "Good, you came alone. Smart woman. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to get into the black Mercedes that just pulled up behind you. You're going to give us your phone and the copies of those files you stole from your husband's computer. And then we're all going to have a nice conversation with Mr. Okonkwo about family loyalty and the consequences of betrayal." I turned to see the Mercedes, tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. This was it, the moment of choice. Get in the car and possibly die, or refuse and watch Tunde die. But then I heard Kunle's voice in the wireless earpiece I'd hidden beneath my hair. "We see them. We see you. We're moving in. Keep them talking." I want to see Tunda first, I said into the phone. I want to know he's okay before I give you anything. A pause, then, fine. Walk down to the bridge supports. Slowly. Any sudden moves, and the boy gets hurt. I descended the stairs to the area beneath the bridge, where homeless people lived in makeshift shelters, where the city's invisible population survived just out of sight. Tunde's eyes met mine, and I saw both hope and despair warring in his expression. I'm sorry, he mouthed silently. One of the men grabbed my arm roughly. The phone. The files. Now. They're not on me, I said. Did you really think I'd be stupid enough to bring them? The man's grip tightened painfully. Then where are they? Safe, with people who'll release everything to the press if anything happens to me or this boy. It's over. Your boss's empire is finished. The only question now is whether he goes down quietly or takes all of you with him. The man looked uncertain, glancing at his partner. In that moment of hesitation, I heard the sound I'd been waiting for. The screech of multiple cars, the shouts of, EFCC, nobody move! The thunder of boots on pavement as armed agents surrounded us. Everything happened at once. The men tried to run, but they were tackled within seconds. Tunde broke free and ran to me, and I wrapped my arms around him, shielding his body with mine. Around us, chaos erupted. People scattering, agents shouting commands, cameras flashing as Blessing the journalist documented everything from a safe distance. And then I saw him, Chigozie, stepping out of the Mercedes, his face a mask of rage and betrayal as EFCC agents moved to arrest him. Amara, he roared across the distance. What have you done? Do you have any idea what you've destroyed? I met his eyes steadily, Tunde trembling against me. I destroyed a lie. I destroyed a fortune built on graves. I destroyed the illusion that money makes everything permissible. That boy is a liar, Chigozie shouted as agents cuffed his hands behind his back. A con artist. He manipulated you. Manipulated Zara. His name is Tunde Adewale, I interrupted, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. His father was Musa Adewale, a dancer who performed at your meeting in Maiduguri 3 years ago. His mother was Halima Adewale, who died hiding her son from the violence your money helped create. They were human beings, Chigozie, not numbers in a business plan, not obstacles to be removed. People with names and dreams and families. Chigozie's face had gone white. For the first time in our 15-year marriage, I saw him without his armor, without his confidence, without his ability to spin and charm and manipulate. I saw him as he truly was, a man who'd sold his soul for success and was only now realizing the price. Please, he said, and his voice broke. Amara, please, think of Zara. Think of what this will do to her. I am thinking of her, I said quietly. I'm thinking that I'd rather she grow up poor, but principled than rich and rotten. I'm thinking that she deserves a mother who shows her that courage matters more than comfort. And I'm thinking that the best thing I can do for my daughter is teach her that some things, justice, integrity, human life, are worth sacrificing everything for. As they led Chigozie away, he looked back at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, no understanding, only hatred and the bitter knowledge of absolute defeat. Kunle appeared at my side, Blessing right behind him with her camera. It's done, he said quietly. The EFCC has enough to prosecute. Your testimony, the documents, Tunda's witness statement, the paper trail. It's over, Amara. You did it. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean, like I'd burned down my entire life to expose the rot at its foundation. Everything I'd known, everything I'd been, was ash now. Tuna looked up at me, his ancient eyes full of questions. What happens now, Ma? Now? I smiled despite the tears streaming down my face. Now we go home and tell Zara the truth. All of it. And then we figure out how to build a new life. A smaller life, maybe, but a true one. Together. As we walked back to Kunle's car, away from the police tape and the gathering crowds and the smoking ruins of my marriage, I felt something unexpected. Not happiness exactly, but something lighter than I'd felt in years. Freedom, the freedom of having nothing left to lose and nothing left to hide. The freedom of knowing that whatever came next, poverty, struggle, judgment, I would face it with my integrity intact and my conscience clear. And with Tunde's small hand in mine and Zara waiting at home, I had everything that truly mattered. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Will Amara's sacrifice be worth it? Find out in the final chapter. Comment what you think should happen next. The mansion on Banana Island sold within 2 weeks. A Chinese tech investor paid cash, 150 million naira, that was immediately frozen by the EFCC as part of Chigozi's asset seizure. Everything was frozen. The cars, the investment accounts, the offshore holdings in Dubai and London. The empire Chigozi had built over 2 decades evaporated like morning mist under the Lagos sun. We moved into a 3-bedroom flat in Yaba, my grandmother's old apartment that had been sitting empty for years. It was clean but cramped, a universe away from the sprawling mansion we'd left behind. No marble floors, no crystal chandeliers, no servants' quarters. Just peeling paint, ceiling fans that wheezed asthmatically, and neighbors whose lives pressed against ours through thin walls. Zara cried for 3 days straight. "I hate this place," she screamed at me on our 4th night there, her wheelchair barely fitting between the cramped furniture. "I hate what you did. Daddy wasn't perfect, but at least we had a real life. At least I had physical therapy and private doctors and a chance at getting better." I knelt beside her wheelchair, my heart breaking. "Baby, don't baby me," she was sobbing now, her beautiful face twisted with rage and grief. "You destroyed everything for a boy you barely knew. A stranger. What about me? What about your daughter? Did you even think about what I needed?" Tunde, who'd been staying in the 3rd bedroom, appeared in the doorway. His face was stricken. "Maybe I should leave, Ma. I'm causing too much—" "No!" Zara's shout surprised us both. Through her tears, she wheeled herself toward him. "No, Tunde. This isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. It's her." She pointed at me. "It's Mama who tore our family apart." I let her rage, let her scream, let her pour out all the pain and confusion and betrayal she was feeling. What could I say? She wasn't wrong. I had destroyed her life as she knew it. I had chosen justice over her comfort, principle over her medical care, a stranger's truth over my own daughter's stability. When her sobs finally subsided into hiccups, I spoke quietly. "You're right. I made a choice that hurt you, and I can't take that back. But Zara, your father helped kill Tunde's parents. Not directly, not with his own hands, but his money funded the violence that destroyed entire villages. And when I learned that truth, I had 2 choices: stay comfortable and silent, or speak up and face the consequences. If I'd chosen comfort, what would I have been teaching you? You would have been teaching me that my mother loves me more than she loves being righteous." Zara shot back. The words hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Tunde spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Zara, your mother chose to love you the only way she knew how, by showing you what kind of woman she really is. Not the woman who lives in a mansion and wears designer clothes. The real woman, who stands up even when it costs everything." He moved closer to her wheelchair. "My mother did the same thing. When the men came to our village, she could have run and saved herself. Instead, she hid me in a water tank and faced them. She chose me over her own life. Your mother chose your soul over your comfort. Maybe that's what real love looks like." Zara stared at him for a long moment, then dissolved into fresh tears. But this time, she reached out and took his hand. "I'm still angry," she whispered. "You're allowed to be," I told her, moving to embrace them both. "You're allowed to be furious and hurt and scared, but we're going to get through this, together." It wasn't a Hollywood moment of instant forgiveness. It was messy and incomplete and painful. But it was real. And real, I was learning, was worth more than perfect. The trial became national news, not just because of Chigozi's wealth and prominence, but because of what the case revealed about the intersection of business and violence in Nigeria. Blessing Adeyemi's investigative reports in this day sparked protests, government inquiries, and international scrutiny of mining operations across the country. I testified for 6 hours, presenting the documents I'd stolen, the photographs, the email trails. Chigozi's lawyers tried to tear me apart on the stand, painting me as a vindictive wife, a woman scorned, someone who'd fabricated evidence out of spite. But then Tunde testified. The courtroom fell silent as this small, scarred boy stood in the witness box and told his story with devastating simplicity. He didn't embellish. He didn't cry or appeal to emotion. He just stated facts in his clear, steady voice. The meeting his father attended, the ring he remembered, the violence that followed, the mining equipment that appeared on his village's land. And when Chigozi's lead lawyer tried to trip him up, asking how a 7-year-old child could possibly remember such specific details from 3 years ago, Tunde looked the man straight in the eye and said, "Sir, you remember happy things. I remember the things that killed my parents. Every detail is burned into my brain like a scar. I couldn't forget if I tried." The courtroom erupted. The judge had to call for order 3 times, and in that moment I saw several jurors wipe their eyes. Chigozi was convicted on 17 counts: fraud, bribery, conspiracy to commit violence, illegal mining operations, and violations of humanitarian law. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 10 years. When the verdict was read, Chigozi looked directly at me across the courtroom. His face was empty of everything except defeat. He mouthed something. I couldn't tell if it was, "I'm sorry," or "I hate you." Then he was led away in chains. I felt nothing. Not triumph, not vindication, not even relief. Just a vast, echoing emptiness where 15 years of marriage used to live. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the same market in Yaba, where I'd bought vegetables that morning. Something I'd never done in my old life. Surrounded by the press of bodies and the smell of fresh tomatoes and stockfish. A woman selling fabrics called out to me, "Sister Amara, I saw you on television. You're that brave woman who sent her billionaire husband to prison." I froze, waiting for the condemnation, the judgment that I'd been hearing from certain circles. Wealthy Lagos society women who thought I'd betrayed my own class, who called me a fool and worse. But the fabric seller was smiling. "You did good, sister. These rich men think they can do anything, kill anyone, and get away with it because they have money. You showed them different. You showed them that some things money can't buy, like courage and conscience." Other women in the market began to nod and murmur agreement. One old mama selling peppers grabbed my hand. "Your husband did bad thing. You did good thing. That's all. Simple." I burst into tears right there in the market, surrounded by these women who'd probably never lived in mansions or driven luxury cars, but who understood something fundamental about justice and dignity that all my years of privilege had obscured. They gathered around me, these strangers, patting my back and offering kind words in Yoruba and Pidgin and broken English. And for the first time since the trial ended, I felt less alone. At home that evening, I found Tunde and Zara in the small living room. He was teaching her a traditional Hausa dance, modified so she could do it from her wheelchair, using her arms and upper body. She was laughing, actually laughing, as she struggled to match his rhythm. "No, no," Tunde was saying, grinning. "Feel it in your chest first, then let it flow to your shoulders. Like this, see? Dancing isn't about your legs, remember? It's about your spirit." I watched them from the doorway, these 2 wounded children who'd found healing in each other's friendship. Zara would never walk again. We'd had to transfer her care to a public hospital where the physical therapy was less advanced. And the prosthetic research program she'd been enrolled in was now financially out of reach. But somehow she seemed more alive now than she'd been in that mansion, surrounded by the best medical care money could buy. "Mama," she called out when she noticed me, "come dance with us. Tuna says even cooking and washing dishes can be a dance if you have the right attitude." I joined them, this unlikely family forged in fire. A disgraced wife, a paralyzed daughter, and an orphaned boy who'd lost everything but kept dancing. We must have looked ridiculous, 3 people moving to music only we could hear in a cramped flat with peeling paint and secondhand furniture. But we were happy. Not the easy happiness that comes from comfort and security. The harder kind, the happiness that comes from knowing you've done the right thing even when it cost you everything, from building something real from the ashes of something false. My phone rang. It was Kunli. Amara, I have news. The EFCC has recovered some of the frozen assets. Not much. Most of it's tied up in legal proceedings, but they're releasing a small amount for Zara's medical care. Public relations mostly. They don't want to look like they're punishing an innocent child. How much? I asked, already knowing it wouldn't be enough for the private treatments she'd been receiving. Enough for public hospital care with some supplements. Maybe private physical therapy twice a month instead of twice a week. It's not what she had before, but it's more than Tunde's parents got, I interrupted softly. More than thousands of displaced children get. We'll make it work. Thank you, Kunli. After I hung up, Zara wheeled over to me. She'd clearly overheard. It's okay, Mama. I've been doing research online. There are exercises I can do on my own, YouTube videos from therapists, support groups for people with spinal injuries. I don't need fancy treatments. I just need to not give up. She'd grown up so much in 6 months. My daughter, who'd once measured her worth in designer clothes and exclusive schools, was now talking about support groups and self-directed therapy with a maturity that humbled me. When did you become so wise? I asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. When I met Tunde, she said simply, he showed me that strength isn't about what you have. It's about what you do with what's left after everything's been taken away. That night after the children were asleep, I sat on our small balcony looking out at the Lagos skyline. The same city, the same buildings I'd viewed from our mansion in Banana Island, but from a completely different angle now. From down here among the people, the city looked both harsher and more beautiful. Real in a way it never had from my privileged perch. My phone buzzed with a message from Blessing, the journalist who'd helped expose Chigozi's crimes. Amara, thought you should know. 3 more companies have been indicted based on what your case revealed. The investigation is expanding. Children's advocacy groups are pushing for reparations to displaced families. You started something big. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I thought about Tunde's parents, about all the people who died or been displaced so that men like my husband could add zeros to their bank accounts. My sacrifice wouldn't bring them back. It wouldn't undo the damage. But maybe it would prevent the next attack, save the next village, spare the next child from becoming an orphan. Maybe that was enough. A year after the trial, Tunde stood on the stage of the National Theatre in Lagos. He'd been invited to perform at a fundraiser for displaced children from the Northeast, one of many initiatives that had emerged in the wake of Chigozi's conviction. He was no longer a homeless boy dancing for coins. He was Tunde Adewale, survivor, witness, and dancer, performing choreography he'd created himself that told the story of loss, survival, and hope. Zara and I sat in the front row, and I held her hand as we watched this extraordinary child, this young man really, because trauma and truth had aged him beyond his 11 years, move across the stage with such grace and power that the entire audience seemed to hold their breath. When the performance ended, the theater erupted in applause. People were crying, standing, shouting his name, and Tunde stood there, taking it all in. No longer the scared boy under the bridge, but someone who'd found his voice through movement and used it to speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves. After the show, as admirers crowded around Tunde, a woman approached me. She was middle-aged, elegantly dressed, with kind eyes. Mrs. Okonkwo, or do you prefer your maiden name now? I never know the protocol for these things. Amara is fine, I said, trying to place her face. I'm Dr. Adebayo. I run a private orthopedic practice. I've been following your daughter's case. I'd like to offer her a scholarship for our specialized spinal injury program. Cutting-edge treatments, twice-weekly sessions, no cost to you. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. Why? Why would you do that? She smiled. Because what you did, choosing principle over comfort, truth over security, that kind of courage deserves support. And because your daughter shouldn't be punished for her mother's integrity, she deserves every chance to heal, regardless of her father's crimes. Tears blurred my vision. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem adequate. Then don't say anything. Just bring her to my office on Monday. We'll start with a comprehensive evaluation and go from there. She pressed a business card into my hand. Oh, and Mrs. Okon, Amara? You're not alone. More people admire what you did than you realize. We may not all have your courage, but we're grateful to live in a country where at least one person still believes justice matters more than money. As she walked away, I looked down at the card in my hand, then up at Tunde taking photos with fans, then at Zara chatting excitedly with other wheelchair users she'd met at the performance. This strange patchwork family we'd become, this smaller but truer life we were building. It wasn't what I'd imagined when I married Chigozie 15 years ago. It was better, because it was built on truth instead of lies, on justice instead of exploitation, on love instead of luxury. And every day, watching Tunde dance and Zara grow stronger and braver, I learned again that the things that truly matter, integrity, courage, human dignity, can't be bought or sold. They can only be chosen, over and over again, even when the cost is everything. Epilogue. 2 years after Chigozie's conviction, I received a letter from him. Prison had changed him, or maybe it had just revealed who he'd always been beneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. The letter was full of self-pity, of justifications, of blame directed at everyone but himself. But at the end, he wrote something that made me pause. I hope you're satisfied, Amara. I hope destroying me was worth sacrificing our daughter's future and our family's legacy. Because of you, the Okonkwo name is synonymous with shame instead of success. Because of you, Zara will grow up poor instead of privileged. Because of you, I'll die in this prison. I hope you can live with that. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Then I looked around our small flat, at the second-hand furniture and the photos on the walls, at Tunde's dance trophies lined up on the shelf, at Zara's physical therapy equipment in the corner. Through the window, I could hear the sounds of Lagos, music and laughter and arguments and life all pressing close, real and raw and beautiful in its messiness. Could I live with what I'd done, with the choices I'd made, the prices I'd paid, the sacrifices I'd demanded of my daughter and myself? Yes, I could live with it. Because unlike Chigozie, I could sleep at night without seeing the faces of the people who died for my comfort. I could look at myself in the mirror and recognize the woman looking back. I could hold my daughter's hand and know that I'd shown her something more valuable than wealth, the courage to stand up even when standing meant falling. And I could watch Tunde dance and know that his parents' deaths weren't completely meaningless, that at least one life had been saved, one truth had been told, one act of justice had been served in a country where justice was often just another commodity to be bought and sold. Was it enough? Would it ever be enough? Maybe not. Probably not. But it was something, and something real and true was worth more than anything false, no matter how golden the lie. That evening, as we sat down to dinner together, rice and stew, simple and filling, nothing fancy, Zara asked the question she'd been building up to for weeks. Mama, do you ever regret it? What you did? Tunde stopped eating, watching me intently. They both deserved an honest answer. Yes, I said finally. I regret that I didn't see the truth sooner. I regret the years I spent being comfortable while other people suffered. I regret that you lost your old life, Zara. I regret that Tunde lost his parents, that I can't give them back. I regret a lot of things. But not turning in Daddy? No, not that. That was the first truly right thing I'd done in years. Maybe in my whole life. Zara nodded slowly, processing this. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. I used to hate you for it. For months, I hated you so much. But now I think I understand. You showed me that being a good person matters more than being a comfortable person. And even though our life is harder now, I think I'm a better person than I would have been if we'd stayed in that mansion pretending everything was fine. She turned to Tunde. And I got you as a brother. That's worth something, right? Tunde's eyes filled with tears, but he was smiling. Worth everything, sister. Worth everything. We held hands around that small table, our mismatched family bound by truth and choice and love, the complicated kind of love that demands sacrifice and forgiveness and growth. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no magical healing, no restoration of wealth, no dramatic reconciliation with Chigozie rotting in his prison cell. But it was ours. This small, true, difficult, beautiful life. And I wouldn't trade it for all the mansions in Banana Island. Because I'd learned something in the ashes of my old life. That real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property deeds or designer clothes. It's measured in being able to face yourself in the mirror, in raising children who know the difference between right and wrong and have the courage to choose right even when it costs them, in being part of something larger than yourself, part of the long, hard struggle for justice in a world that often seems designed to reward injustice. Chigozie had been right about one thing. I'd destroyed the Okonkwo legacy. But I'd also built something new from its ashes. Not a legacy of wealth and power, but something more enduring. A legacy of courage, of integrity, of standing up even when standing meant falling. And that was something worth dancing about. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. This is African Tales Vault, where we tell the stories that matter. The ones about courage, justice, and the complicated beauty of doing the right thing even when it costs everything. What did you think of Amara's journey? Would you have made the same choice? Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the richest life is the one where you can sleep at night knowing your hands are clean. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Until next time, keep dancing through your struggles just like Tundi taught us. God bless you all.